61 shooters from Brisbane, Warwick, Coonabarabran, Narrabri, Tenterfield, Kempsey, Port Macquarie, Sydney, as well as the host club Coffs Harbour, are competing in different disciplines of pistol. Air, standard, centrefire and free pistol make up the tournament, with events for men, women and also juniors. One of the special guest competitors is Robert Landers, a master grade air pistol shooter from Glen Innes, who is a former state junior champion. For the first time, the 50-metre range is being used, and tomorrow morning, member for Cowper Gary Neal will officially open the new range. In the air event, Coffs Harbour shooters Adrian Varco and Darren Cheers were leading with 568 and 551 points respectively, with Cessnock's Jim Wells in third on 521.
It was a carnival atmosphere for the opening of East End Mall, now the second one in the city's main street. It cost $400,000 to develop, $130,000 of which was donated by local businesses. $80,000 still needs to be raised for the finishing touches. Recently, council contributed more than half of this. According to Mayor Rosemary Leach, it was an investment in Armidale's future.
Yes, I believe it will bring further business to this town. We have restoration of our buildings. I believe we'll have a very historic centre down here.
Following the official opening, a giant auction of goods donated by the community and local business houses was held in an attempt to raise the outstanding funds. And the green horse at the end of the mall has been donated by Mayor Leach. After spotting it in the historic Victorian town of Castlemaine, she thought it an appropriate monument for Armidale, symbolising the site in the main street where horse owners of yesteryear left their ponies while popping into the Imperial Hotel across the road for a quick refreshment. Catherine Lamond, NBN News.
Attack was the order of the day, with defence at times non-existent. Moree hit pay dirt first up when Scott Arthur swivelled out of a tackle in his own half and set sail for home. Up over the halfway, Narrabri fullback Jim Meppen came across in cover, but Arthur brushed him aside with ease and raced away to score. Again, the Narrabri defence fell apart when Moree gained possession from second phase play, and tall winger Damien Smith sighted a gap as big as the Sydney Heads and made Narrabri pay for their slack defence. There may be more heard about a suspected late tackle by Meppen. But to their credit, Narrabri crossed for a smart try. Out along the back line through three sets of hands where Adrian Swagger was waiting, and he did well in skirting the Moree defence to score. Corindi lead the competition from Moree and Barraba, with next week's match between Walker and Tamworth all important, although Tamworth must beat Walker and then rely on them being beaten in the final round to qualify for the finals. Most areas throughout the state had held elimination rounds so as to send their strongest possible teams to the titles, and all the traditional events of longboarding were contested. Even in surf that was on a 1/2 to 1 metre swell, the veteran board riders showed they had lost none of their skills they had displayed many years ago, and the standard of these titles was excellent. In the Masters division, it was a win for North Sydney's Bob Thomas, who just shaded his opponents. In the Legends, Newcastle's Ted Harvey was one of the favourites, and true to form, he picked up the title. Jenny Sheehan of Port Macquarie proved too good for the rest in the women's field and rode away with a well-deserved win. In the 8-foot and 9-foot traditional mal, Hayden Swan of Sydney and David Campbell of Newcastle were the respective winners, while in the one remaining event, it was a win for Ron Rudder of Newcastle in the Grand Masters. With a win over the Steelers last week, the Sharks were looking for their second big scalp, and it was only a good run by Robbie O'Davis that turned the tide for the Newcastle Knights. From there, it wasn't long before the red and blue machine got rolling. McCormick again the springboard for a raid. Godden was there in support. His long pass found Kemp, back inside to the captain Michael Hagan, and it was 6-0. Healy kicked a penalty goal for Cronulla before Godden again busted the Gummy Sharks and was brought down just metres from the line, and the Knights were looking good as they led 6-2 at the break. But the second half was all Shark attack. Following a Schuster penalty for 8-2, Quinn disturbed the quiet crowd. His grubber kick to the in-goal area a beauty, only to be butchered by his own teammates. Then sensation. Cronulla were over the line, but referee David Manson deliberated with his touch judge and disallowed the try for a Knights defender being held back, and Newcastle breathed a little easier. But the Sharks did score next. Quinn's grubber rebounding off a Knights player, Borton picking up the loose ball, flicking it on to Quinn, who scored just wide of the left-hand upright. But 3 minutes before the end, and looking rattled, the Knights spun the ball to the left from Robble to Glanville. Kemp did well to handle, out to O'Davis, and Big Sarge was backing up, and the Knights were home and in third spot with a 14-6 win. And what a game of football at Charlestown. Phil Williams grabbing the first of 4 tries from dummy half. The Butcher Boys bounced back. Warren Schilling's grubber kick waited beautifully for Adam Hall, who did the rest. Then a smart piece of backline play with Craig Hammond steaming onto the ball, and he had no trouble in scoring. Troy Reid got involved, slipped out of one tackle onto his captain Warren Schillings, and Schillings did the rest. The pace continued. Big Brendan Dooley did really well in being able to offload to Williams for number 2. Moments later, the carry hooker was again in, Lanane making the break, and backing up was Williams, and there was nothing in it. Phil Williams scored his 4th try of the match early in the second half, and the Bulldogs were looking good. But the Butcher Boys weren't going to be denied their chance at the top 5, and a sensational backline move highlighted by a long cutout pass found John Leary on the spot. His pass found Simon, and Central were home. To the state longboard titles, and in the Masters division was a win for North Sydney's Bob Thomas, who just shaded his opponents. In the Legends, Newcastle's Ted Harvey was one of the favourites, and true to form, he picked up the title. Jenny Sheehan of Port Macquarie proved too good for the rest and rode away with the women's title. In the 8-foot and 9-foot traditional mal, Hayden Swan of Sydney and David Campbell of Newcastle were the respective winners, while in the one remaining event, it was a win for Ron Rudder of Newcastle in the Grand Masters. After the rousing win over Penrith the week before, the Knights were expected to blitz the lowly placed Sharks, but it was the host club who took it right up to the would-be semi-finalists, and in most eyes were a bit unlucky not to take the match. One giant mess-up in the in-goal area costing a try, a forward pass having another disallowed, and this controversial ruling by David Manson, John Schuster being held back as he went for the tackle, and David Borton being denied what would have been at least a 4-pointer.
We got a couple of decisions that went our way for a change, and it was quite good actually, and maybe any other time it wouldn't have come off.
However, the Sharks did score in that second half, Archie Brunker having a foot in it.
I was hoping that they would have picked it up, but it hit me on the shin, and it sort of bounced their way and they've scored off it. You walk back to the try line feeling like you've lost the game for the side, but make up for it and hopefully score a try yourself.
But good sides make their own luck, and a brilliant first half try to Michael Hagan and a well-worked move in the last 40 minutes saw the Knights retain third position in the Winfield Cup. While happy to take the points, there was plenty of praise for the Sharks.
Well, the Sharks had a blinder of a game yesterday. They come out to knock us off the top of the line. Their forwards played very well and they sort of give it to us real well.
This Sunday's match at Marathon Stadium between the Knights and Manly will go a long way to determining who really are legitimate semi-final aspirants.
On July the 20th, police arrested and charged the five with trespass. They were part of a 50-strong group which took over the Forestry Commission's Armidale office, protesting against logging of old-growth forest in the Styx River catchment and Mummel Gulf near Walker. Today, they staged a more low-key protest outside Armidale Court while they waited to face the magistrate.
People here are prepared to take these actions because they believe it's their duty to protect the endangered species and protect the old-growth forests on behalf of future generations of Australians and on behalf of those species and those forests themselves.
Court action won't deter NEFA. The group has set up another blockade, this time in the Carrai State Forest west of Kempsey, to protest against logging in an area containing the eastern quoll, a native cat thought to have been extinct until sighted recently.
The area contains the last known populations of the eastern quoll on mainland Australia. Now, this species has been believed to be extinct on mainland Australia. As far as I have from reports on site, there's a traditional pipe bollard in the road as well as tripods. This is the normal procedure for NEFA for non-violent blockading. What it really means is that we can prevent vehicular access without having to have any particular standoffs with people.
NEFA has asked the National Parks and Wildlife Service to revoke the Forestry Commission's licence to log the Carrai Plateau, which is within the nominated Werrikimbi Wilderness area. The group says the blockade will remain until its demands are met.
We will remain at the Carrai blockade until such time as this government or the national parks do something to protect the future of the eastern quoll.
The Carmichael report has recommended major changes to the apprenticeship and traineeship schemes so that by the age of 18, school leavers have basic skills and qualifications. The Prime Minister has endorsed the report, and today educators met in Armidale to discuss its ramifications.
What we've got here is an opportunity for people that are involved in the delivery of training at the school level, the TAFE level, the university level and in the private sector, to get together and talk about what the future of training will be for this country.
Also given approval by the government is the Finn report. It too has set targets which teachers must find ways of achieving.
We're moving into a completely new era of training whereby we've had targets set for the participation of young people in the year 2000 and something like 95% of people still in training at year 12. And that's quite a marked departure from where we are at the moment. We need to ease into it. It's not going to happen overnight, although it will happen relatively quickly.
The seminar also looked at the issue of training wages and the place of training in the economic recovery.
If ever there was a development Cinderella story, it's Newcastle's Harbour Foreshore, a fitting venue for the launch of this year's Civic Design Awards. Lord Mayor John McNaughton took steps toward the betterment of the city by scaling the Queen's Wharf Tower to officially open the competition.
It's not a competition between local government areas, incidentally. It's a cooperative effort between the 5 local government areas, but the competition is very keen with owners, builders, designers, architects.
The awards covers a whole spectrum ranging from residential buildings right up to large major buildings such as the hospitals, churches, commercial buildings. There is a category also in the awards covering landscape and environmental design.
Entries will be judged by a committee made up of representatives from local hunter councils, the Master Builders Association and the Royal Australian Institute of Engineers. The competition is designed to enhance how we see ourselves and how others see us in the place we call home.
That's a very important part of the competition, to see that we get national publicity on this, so that people know that we're a very, very well designed area, somewhere where they ought to come and live and work.
Yesterday's meeting brought together the Departments of Health and Agriculture, the Environmental Protection Authority and local politicians. It drew up interim guidelines for a management plan to deal with chemically contaminated land, former banana plantations now being sold for development. Many people have already bought parcels of the land but cannot build on it. They weren't allowed into yesterday's meeting, and that's raised the ire of the North Coast Environment Council.
Now, they say they're working on the federal guidelines for the assessment and management of contaminated sites, and they quite clearly state you require community participation right from the beginning. And those people that are trying to live or trying to sell or trying to build on contaminated land have the right to be represented in these sorts of seminars.
Coffs Harbour Council, however, says it hasn't denied the community an opportunity to speak out.
What we have done is defined the parameters of the problem, and each of the parties have committed themselves that there will be community consultation, not by saying, there it is, we hope you like it, but by saying, here it is, let's comment.
But that doesn't satisfy the North Coast Environment Council. It's accused Coffs Harbour Council of keeping the lid on a massive problem and says council is only acting now to stave off legal action.
It was aware of contaminated land issues as far back as I personally know, 88. They ignored those issues, they went ahead and subdivided, and now the problem is coming home to roost.
Applications to operate the service over the next 3 years have closed in Sydney. Hoping to dominate the mid-North Coast airways include ex-Tamworth-based Eastern Australia and Oxley Airlines at Port Macquarie. The contract to begin in January is for the Taree-Sydney service. Eastern has been servicing this route for the past 5 years, while Oxley has 19 services between Taree and Sydney using both 18 and 36-seater aircraft. Also vying for the service is the Sydney-based Monarch, which operates to the western districts including Forbes, Cowra and Mildura. An announcement on all regional air services, including those further north, is expected in December.
Although the blaze destroyed the news agency and caused $20,000 damage to contents, morning papers were on sale as usual from a makeshift counter. News agent Bob Forster says the fire broke out at about 11 o'clock last night, just after he and wife Kathy had gone to bed in a rear room.
I thought someone broke the front window. I went out to have a look. I noticed the flames when I came out the bedroom.
Fire and police scientific investigators believe the blaze could have been sparked by an electrical fault in a fan heater. They're also looking at other theories.
We're conducting a very thorough inquiry into this fire. There's been a large amount of damage to property, and our physical evidence fellows, as you can see, they're doing a very thorough inquiry, sifting through all the remains.
.38-year-old Hardy Siegfried Sonel, his wife and 2 sons aged 2 and 4 were travelling along this wet road near Wingham when they collided with a southbound Mazda 929. Police believe the Sonel's car hit a side embankment on the Elands Road and bounced off into the path of the Mazda, carrying a Sydney couple aged in their 50s. The driver suffered minor injuries. The Sonel family were taken to Manning Base Hospital suffering serious injuries. The 2-year-old later flown to the John Hunter Hospital, where he's in a serious but stable condition. Mr Sonel died on the way to hospital. A post-mortem will be carried out in Taree tomorrow.
He'd notched 9 tries in first grade. In fact now, several weeks after being dropped to reserves, Flash Ash is still one of the Winfield Cup's leading try scorers. The reason for his relegation? Lack of enthusiasm, according to the club.
If that's the reason or there's other reasons, I really can't argue except give it my best shot because you don't want to play reserve grade all of your life.
Kemp gets it away to Gordon. Gordon goes in. It's a try. It's a try, all right.
Gordon's contract expires this year. Arthur Beetson reportedly wouldn't mind having Flash on the flank at Cronulla.
Money hasn't been thrown my way. It's just more so a friendly chat and what's happening next year.
First things first, overcoming a leg injury and hopefully clawing his way back into the Knights' first grade side for the semi-finals. Anthony Griffiths, NBN News.
Under grey skies and difficult windy conditions, Charlestown's George Dawes and Ray Beasley from Terrigal battled the final out. Ray Beasley, in action here, grabbed the first break and quickly established a 5-3 lead. But the persistence of George Dawes helped him even the scores, the next few ends going shot for shot. At 9-all, Dawes got a break and streaked away to an 18-10 lead. Despite some good bowling by Ray, consistent draw shots saw the Charlestown club coach consolidate his lead and win 31-19.
Over the last 15 years, Bishop Holland has become known and loved by the people of the diocese for his compassion and caring for the ordinary person. And last night they turned up in great number to show their gratitude. While looking after the secular and spiritual welfare of the diocese, he has also championed such issues as Aboriginal land rights and women priests. In his final message, the Bishop preached the gospel, encouraging people to maintain their faith in God while accepting the pain and hurt of the real world. Bishop Holland will retire to Canberra with his wife Joy, but for 12 months from December will hold the post of chaplain to St George's College in Jerusalem. The culmination of the ceremony, Bishop Holland laid his pastoral staff on the high altar, where it will remain until the next bishop is appointed. An election will be held in early October. Bishop Holland then took up his personal staff, a symbol that he remains a bishop throughout his life.
Back in Newcastle, it was a captive audience in the McQuillan household, with Rachel's parents mentally playing every ball of the semi-final match. Despite the 6-1, 6-2 loss to top-seeded Spaniards Arantxa Sanchez Vicario and Conchita Martinez, Ted McQuillan believes the Olympic medal will take pride of place for Rachel.
I think she treats the Wimbledon doubles final that they won when they were juniors as the biggest win. So I think this one would probably beat that.
Prior to the Olympics, McQuillan and Provis had little preparation time together and therefore a chance to develop a partnership.
They seem very tight, not sure of themselves, which is understandable. And the other pair who top 10 singles players, so they're very hard to beat and very hard to get on top of.
Jan believes even though Rachel has played many major tournaments, this being her first Olympics proved a telling factor on the 20-year-old's nerves.
I think it was just inexperience and just overall tension, wanting very badly to win for themselves and their country, and it produced that effect, but they did very well to get where they got anyway.
Catherine Lamond, NBN News. With 70% of New South Wales drought declared, the rain was a welcome sight. It's nowhere near enough to break the crippling drought, but has given renewed hope for farmers. In cropping areas, the falls will revive flagging wheat crops and ensure yield and the size of the crop is maintained, which for farmers means thousands of dollars. On the tablelands, it will provide much needed moisture for pasture growth.
That it's been a very, very welcome change.
Rainfall readings varied across the region. Until 9 this morning, Tamworth had recorded 23 millimetres, Moree 21, Narrabri 17, Glen Innes 32 and Walker 15 millimetres. The rain, however, doesn't look like staying around, with the Bureau of Meteorology predicting a mainly dry weekend. Those on the land are now hoping for follow-up rain.
If this sort of rainfall that we're receiving now is followed up by perhaps 3 or 4 inches in August and another similar dose in September, then we'll have a good spring on our hands, and it may well be the best spring that we've had for 8 to 10 years for many people.
The rain will have some immediate benefits for farmers who've been hand-feeding stock over the past month or more.
If this rain produces a little bit of growth towards the end of August and it cuts out 3 or 4 weeks of feeding at $2,000 or $3,000 per week for feed, then it's worth tens of thousands of dollars.
Peter Norville was farewelled by friends and family at Tamworth as he prepared for his attempt to be the first person to fly a single-engine aircraft non-stop around Australia. The Murrurundi Farmers aircraft is little more than a flying fuel tank, but it'll have only about 2 hours reserve for what's expected to be a 50-hour flight. Peter will drink about 3 litres of water a day and dine on vitamin pills and muesli bars. Lifting off, Peter made the heavy climb to the north. All going well, he should touch down again early Monday morning.
This just because I won't be able to get it. Hold on.
It's a bodgy.
Everybody, go.
For the past 3 weeks, 64 students from an Allsucker High School have undergone a culture shock. Instead of cherry blossoms, they've laid in the shade of gum trees.
Many trees.
Sushi's been replaced by steak and konnichiwa by g'day as the students were immersed in all things Australian. As a result, those from the land of the rising sun now love a sunburnt country.
I had a good time.
I love Australia.
But today the study tour organised by Newcastle University came to an end. Newfound friends shared goodbyes, sighs and tears.
Sad to say goodbye, but I want to use this one. See you again. See you again. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Scott Bevan, NBN News.
It was a sleepless night for the York family. Today they relived last night's Olympic hockey final between Germany and Australia. The Aussies won silver.
Because we were sort of concentrating on the Olympics for such a long period of time, it was relief in a way to know that this was the last game and the end result would soon be decided, and the fact that whatever happened was that we had a silver medal, and that was wonderful.
During the Olympics, a life-size cardboard cutout of Michael has graced the York's lounge room. The band-aid added after Michael received stitches to his head during the final. Last night was the highlight of the 24-year-old's career. He's competed at the Seoul Olympics and played for Australia for the last 5 years.
Michael's been working very hard at his hockey for quite a few years now, and it takes a lot of dedication, travel, and training to get to the level that is expected of an Olympic competitor.
Michael's silver medal will take pride of place amongst a host of other gongs.
I'd say he would be weary, a little bit sore from a smack in the head, and hopefully celebrating and glad that it's all behind him and looking forward to the next hockey tournament.
Remains of the trimaran lie scattered along several hundred metres of beachfront at Nelson Bay. The ply and fiberglass-hulled vessel Andante had recently been bought by its owner in Melbourne. He'd just arrived at Nelson Bay, choosing to moor outside the marina overnight. As conditions deteriorated this morning, he attempted to move the vessel when disaster struck.
The motor failed on him, and before he had any time to do anything else, it was up on the rocks.
Nelson Bay Water Police vessel Cess Abbott attempted to rescue the boat as it was remorselessly hammered to pieces along the breakwall. In the end, all they could do was tow the remnants onto the beach.
We assisted in with a lot of other bystanders to get what gear we could off it, and then towed it off the rocks from where it was onto Nelson Bay Beach.
It's understood the owner was of German descent. He is now in Sydney breaking the news to his fiancée, who was planning to live with him on the trimaran. It's believed he wasn't insured. Tom Hilston, NBN News.
It's been more than 2 years since Newcastle was shaken by the earthquake. While most people remember where they were and what they were doing, there's a strong feeling in the community that before those memories fade, they should be documented in an official history book.
This has been one of the most devastating experiences Newcastle has had, and it's very important that the information and the record be made available for people in the future, and also for those people that might want to use it as an educational experience, doing a thesis.
Although Newcastle City Council originally thought it was a good idea, it recently abandoned the proposal. It was thought the contents of an official earthquake book sanctioned by the council could jeopardise any legal action brought against it. So the writing of the book has been taken up by the public, who formed the Newcastle City Earthquake Committee last night. Alderman Tate was elected chairman. If people want to contribute their memories, how do they go about doing that?
I think in the first instance, if they'd like to, they could send it to me, care of Newcastle City Council.
Under the Earthquake Relief Fund, a grant of $60,000 was originally allocated to the council to have the book written. The committee will investigate whether it can use this money to have Newcastle's history preserved.